All right, welcome and good evening to the July 10th, 2018 Jonathan Association Board of Directors meeting. We have concluded our homeowner forum. First item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. I think we do have a few edits here, so you want to just go maybe person by person and see if they have any suggestions?
Good.
I'd like to add under, how about before the management report, add vacant seat. And then under new business C, add 4th of July.
I have one thing to add this evening. We have a certificate of deposit that's up for renewal. Just want to go through, some of my recommendations on where this board should go with that. So I have some rates to talk about. That's under new business, under D.
Mm-hmm.
No. No? All right. Anything else?
I move that we adopt the agenda as amended.
All right, I have a motion.
I second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, the next item on the agenda is the Secretary's report, the approval of the June 2018 minutes on page 1 through 3. No one has any edits? We can move to adopt.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Do we have anybody taking minutes tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Judy.
Thanks.
Good question. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the Treasurer's report, the acceptance of the June 2018 financials. Okay, page 4 through 19.
A point of clarification. So what does it mean that we're accepting the financials? This is a new term that's come up in the last few months, and
Sure.
I guess I just kind of gloss it over. What's the intention behind accepting
Intention
them?
behind it is so that the board is physically looking at the financials and, again, accepting them for what you see as far as bills that have been paid, deposits that have come in, et cetera.
Yeah.
The idea behind it is to also get the treasurer very involved, because typically the treasurer will get the full financials, whereas the board will get a snippet.
I had a few questions for Carrie that she hasn't had time to answer, so if that's what accepting them means, I think maybe we'll have to wait tonight.
Okay. Yeah, so your question of, do we need to approve the financials month to month? I'm sure it's nice to have for you guys. At the same time, there's probably gonna be things that come up that people miss. Do we want to continue doing this way, or does anyone have any suggestions on making any changes?
Well, I think it's a good idea because it does cause us to look at the financials when the management report comes out, and then, hopefully get those questions to Carrie before the meeting.
So that's a good question, a good topic for discussion on protocol.
Yeah.
But
Right.
according to Robert's Rules of Order, you don't approve the treasury report. If we have questions, we should ask them, but we do not make a motion that we approve this.
Okay.
Really, the crux of my question is that there's a lot of times where, once a quarter, I'll go back and look and drill down invoice level. And I want to make sure that I'm not out of line by doing that after we already accepted them.
Sure.
So that's why I asked the question.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
have
a good
time to do it
point.
a month, it's
I think,
by once a quarter.
you know, as far as protocol, I would suggest that going forward, anytime these financials are in here, if we get questions submitted, you know, perhaps, and we've gone back and forth on this numerous times, you know, when it comes to when do we get the board packet, you know what I mean? We usually get it either Wednesday or Thursday, is that right? And then that would say that you'd have to get questions to Carrie by Friday. Is there any, when do the financials get closed out?
Well, with you doing your meeting the second Tuesday of each month, it really depends on the dates, but they get closed out typically on the first of the month.
Okay.
So in a case like this one, we're preparing and putting the board packet together on the second.
Yeah.
So you've only really got a 24-hour window there where the accountants have time to get your financials together to get them to Carrie and myself to get put into the board packet.
Because it's fair to you guys to get, you know, ample time to answer questions, because there could be a lot of questions that people have. I'm just trying to think of a way that would allow us to get enough time to be able to ask those questions and then try to find answers. I mean, is it a way where we could get those financials sent out right away when they get closed out? And then that either gives us at least several days to ask questions? Do we not approve
I was to say, what about delaying a month?
delaying it a month?
In other words, so instead of approving June's now, you'd approve June's next month.
And another
That-
crux of that too is like, you don't want in the meeting, like, if I have a question about why we've got $1,500 from Lionel Equipment for new tires, I mean, I can assume we just bought a new Bobcat, we put new tires on also? Like, you wouldn't want that question in the meeting, you want me to send that to you, you'd research it, and then come back with the answer, right?
Very easily could, yes.
That's why you can't approve.
So it seems to me like that 1 month delay is probably gonna be, it could be helpful in giving the board time to look through the financials and really truly approve them.
And I just want to make the point that we can, like, let's say we notice something on financials 3 or 4 months back, we can still raise questions on that, and they'll still make adjustments, and if it's needed, it's, you know, but I mean, it's better to catch the,
It's more of that process, right? Because you'd hate to sign up on something knowing that there might be a glaring, you come back to something and you didn't, the whole issue here is that people do take the time to look at the financials and to really drill down to make sure that, yeah, they have an understanding of what's going on within our association.
so instead of approving them, and I'm interested in learning more what Judy just said about Robert's Rule of Order, you don't approve them. Instead of approving them, maybe we can just ask the question, does anybody have any questions on the financials? And you know what I mean? Like, we're not necessarily saying that we're not gonna have any more.
Okay.
I mean, it's one of those things, that you want to be able to go back and, just as an example, in a sub-association, I noticed on a financial 3 months later, something that was indeed an error, something that, and I was able to go back and get that straightened out. So I think it's good to have a place for it on our agenda, and that we get in the habit of looking at them. I don't think we necessarily have to approve them. I think maybe just
Okay.
bring it up and say, do we have any questions on them?
That's what you should do.
Yeah.
Okay.
And historically, all we really reviewed is the treasurer would say, these are our balances, this is our financial position, this is what we have coming up, and it's time to sound the alarm bell to the board if we're gonna have a shortfall
Right.
for the year, or the case is.
Yeah, so like one thing
So-
I would note or mention is that last year when the budget was done, they did not, the budget did not allocate as much for collections as we had in past years. So we're showing up now, you know, being way over budget in collections. But, you know, we decided as a board that we needed to move back, you know, to enforce our collections policy. And that is the result is that we're way over budget in collections, so. But I mean, it's good to keep looking at them and know where we're at with different things. I don't know that the term approval has to be in there.
Well, and the way we've got it worded on there is the acceptance versus approval, so.
Right.
Didn't intend to sidetrack us for a long conversation, but I just wanted to.
No, so I mean,
Clarity
moving
is-
forward,
is
yeah,
good
we
for
won't be
everyone.
approving the previous month's financials. It'll just be a spot where people, you know, should take the time to go through the budgets, go through the various financial documents and pose questions. That's fine. It's fair. Okay. Does anyone have any suggestions or concerns or comments on the budget? Judith, I was interested when you talked about the legal expense budget, right? So are you looking at the legal collection fees? Or are you looking at the administrative expense of legal expenses? Because when we did the budget, I recall the board spending a lot of times on trying to get better at budgeting our expenses, and it does look like you are right. I do see that now.
Yeah, 5075.
Yeah.
But also, I believe that.
That gets put up into our chargeback to homeowners in terms of income.
Right, so it doesn't alarm me, and I think we've already seen that, you know, I mean, we've gone from over 300,000 down to 81,000
Yeah.
in actual, you know, not including, but we've got 40,000 additional out there in legal fees, but they will be collected. So, but I'm just saying that, and I wasn't part of setting the budget for last year, but in October, when we set the budget, we're gonna need to put more in there for collections.
Do we, Stephanie?
What's that?
Do we need to put more in for collection expenses? And
Well-
because it gets credited back to
So there's two things at play here. So remember, when do we spend our money for collection typically?
upfront.
We spend a bunch of it in the beginning of the year, and then we'll have months where we won't spend anything, right? But we'll get larger chunks. So we've got a lot of those $50 fees that have hit.
Right.
And I don't know, I know there was some talk about allocating it seasonally, the budget. And I don't know if that took place in this particular line item or not, or if this was just 25,000 divided out equally over 12 months. And then to answer your point, that yes, if we pay the expense, we charge it back to the homeowner, which then increases the revenue line. So theoretically, if 100% of those individuals paid their collection expense, the net cost to us is zero.
It's just showing us that at this point in time, we're like just about 10,000 over budget,
Yep.
so. But yeah, we know it's gonna come back into, so.
I mean, I will say that the one thing that I want to just, you know, hats off to our board and management staff, our legal expenses under the line 5070, we're currently running about $3,900 under budget, which, you know, I think that was one thing that the board made an initiative for 2018 to really reduce. So,
Point well taken. Good to keep an eye on it.
okay. That's all I had. If there's no any other thoughts or comments, we'll move on to the next item. The vacant director's seat.
Mr. President, since there was two candidates and there's one seat, I would request that the board consider both applicants and perhaps place their vote by secret ballot.
Okay.
I don't know if you've prepared forms or anything for us. As in years past, we've done that.
Never had this happen in the middle of a,
Yeah, so secret ballot is you put two names on the form, you pass one out to each of us, each director would circle it, the president would tally the votes, and those with the highest vote, someone would make a motion to appoint that individual. But usually we do it by secret ballot so that, you know, no one's disenfranchised. And if the individual's here and they've been elected, they've been offered to take their seat, apparently.
Should this be an emotion?
Well,
I don't think we need to,
We can
You
vote and
figure
then make a motion to appoint, correct?
yeah,
That's
once we vote, then we make a motion to appoint.
So we,
Oh, I thought you were just gonna market check.
well, I think if you want to do it secret ballot, you have to
That's fine.
actually,
The same.
can we move on to the manager report while I prepare these and we'll come back to this at the end?
Sure. Manager report, page 20.
All right, financials, we just kind of went over. I think we covered most of that.
Yeah, microphone over there for you.
Annual calendar, our next event coming up is National Night Out. That is something I have on an action item, so we can come back to that. Next board meeting is August 14th, here at the Chambers. There was 12 change of ownership this last month, that are on page 26. Trail improvements were completed the Thursday before the 4th, so I think that was the 28th or something. Met with the vendor today, went over a couple of them. Everything looks good. We did have, I think, 2 complaints of some turf damage that the vendor is going to be repairing. It's very minimal. And the guys started today putting mulch alongside the trails. And we'll show pictures and stuff with that through email or the next month, because they just started today. Trail looked really good, and everything was completed. They did get a little delayed with the rain, but ended up finishing it on the 28th. Insurance proposal, page 27. I don't know much about this, do you? Or this is just the proposal from our insurance company, showing the difference in fees on page 33. Price increase was actually pretty minimal. Do we need to approve this, or?
The board will, yes.
Does anyone have any questions about this?
The Kubota tractor is listed on this proposal?
Was there what, I'm sorry?
The Kubota tractor is listed as equipment on this proposal?
So we gotta get that changed. Eyes are terrible.
Maybe the trade-in date was
They
after
increased
that?
your property value, total property value as well.
Does this include D&O coverage, and is there only one bid, or is there multiple bids?
There's only the one bid. It's the only one carrier that, again, we went through this back in late winter, that frankly is willing to talk to us at the moment.
It does include D&O.
And yes, it does.
So one point of clarification, they're both underwritten through West Bend. You'll see that one is slightly lower than the other, and it's really due to in the fidelity and crime column there. There's a different insurance coverage. I don't know, if you guys look at that, are those items that are listed under fidelity crime, is on the left-hand column versus the right-hand column, are those values sufficient? The 950,000, 250,000?
Well, the left-hand column is your current policy.
Okay,
It's in place for 2017, 2018.
okay,
The one on the right is the proposed 2018, 2019.
okay. Yeah, so.
Basically, they're increasing your limits moving into 2018, 19.
Yeah.
There also, as well as your total property values at the top.
Okay, so I should have asked my question. Why did they raise them from 950 to 1.2? Is that just something that they recommended, or?
Yes,
Okay, understood.
and frankly, because it's anything technology related seems to be becoming more frequent.
So cyber liability is covered or is not covered?
It is in here on our computer fraud, if that's what you're asking. And there's wire fraud.
Well, since we have one option in front of us, and I believe our coverage lapses in 10 days, I'd make a motion that we accept the proposal as submitted.
I second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
I'll just need a signature from you then.
Okay.
I don't know if I have the original, but-
Then you'll get the stuff updated?
Yes,
The
I
equipment
have it
updated?
written down. I don't have a lot in here today. There's a couple correspondence for the commission notice tomorrow night. They're having that for the new planning in Cloverfield, right, Judith?
Right.
There's a town hall meeting coming up at Gasson, if anyone's interested in going. It's on page 8, or 38 is the details for that. That is on September 8th. Do you have to sign up for
So
that?
can we back up those notices? So there's
Sure.
one notice that does impact us.
They're what, I'm sorry.
So, the page 37,
Yep,
so there's a big parcel of land that they want to replat to 3 single-family,
Board man. 8,
or 11, excuse me, 11,
11.
right?
So there's
Depends on what
Three
site
to
you're,
go to
depends on what site, what parcel you're talking about.
Yeah, so there's gonna,
11, right?
so there's gonna be 5 homes directly behind Justin and I, 3 on the parcel that is just to the south of us. And then there will be another 3 behind Hemingway, kind of back where the model homes used to be.
So then the question is, are we on title? Are they in the Jonathan Association?
So we've got Helmuth on that, so it probably won't be approved through the planning commission tomorrow because Helmuth is also the attorney for Cloverfield. And we had a reciprocal easement agreement with Phil Johnson, who owns the land, and Dean Johnson, Ken Talley, and who were building Clover Run Phase 2. That's been scrapped because Clover Run Phase 1 has really not gone well at all, and the city's has not been happy with Dean Johnson and how long it's taken to build, and the fact that they ripped up the public sidewalk to put their mail station without permission. So at any rate, now Phil Johnson is working with Fieldstone to do single-family homes there, which is good news to Cloverfield, but we still have this reciprocal easement agreement that states that if things fall through with the townhomes, they still have to follow the easement agreement, and that involves a lot of different things, especially improvements to the alley, a covered mail station, and anyway, it's in the reciprocal easement agreement, and
Just so people understand, that's between
Clover,
the Cloverfield Association Board
Right.
and the developer.
correct. So, I mean, the Cloverfield Board is very happy that single-family homes are gonna be going in there instead of the Dean Johnson townhomes, which were gonna be actually rental townhomes that Ken Talley owned, because we think that Fieldstone is a more reputable builder than Dean Johnson. But they can't move forward until we figure out, because we'd even gone so far as to say that dues had to be paid upfront on an annual basis because Dean Johnson had been, and Phil Johnson had been delinquent to the tune of $50,000 at one point. So now all of this needs to go through the lawyers and be rewritten, and Helmuth is on that right now.
So just, so just so we're clear, when you say "we," you mean you're speaking as a director for that association?
Clover.
Okay, so I'm talking about the Jonathan Association.
Yeah.
Where do we stand from a legal standpoint as far as
So
being on
we-
these parcels, and what does our lawyer
Yeah, let me just bring.
said to us?
So he sent that plat out to me at 4 o'clock this afternoon at 4:30, and I've got it electronically, and Jonathan is on the title.
Okay.
I mean, it's the other side of our block. It's Jonathan and Cloverfield are on the title.
I just want to make sure that this is on the radar ahead of time, so that we're not working backwards as we have with other developments.
So he actually sent Carrie at Karen House, the gentleman from Fieldstone, is sending her house plans and siding colors. And, you know, so that'll be sent out to the art committee.
Judith, now you have a subdivision that you, and then you're gonna have the Jonathan.
Correct.
Okay, so you pay two fees.
Right. Yep, which is the way it is with, I think it's 23. We have 23 sub-associations in Jonathan, so it's very common.
Yeah, so the Jonathan Association is essentially benefiting because Judith is also director of the Cloverfield Association. So we essentially were able to confirm that Jonathan was on the title without really asking our legal counsel to do the search on our behalf.
Right, so he had to do a title search for Clover anyway, so it was, yeah, so I think I can send that out if I need to. I just am so like
Probably
inundated.
wouldn't. I probably wouldn't. You know, that's something that is
Yeah.
is specific to Clover.
Right,
You know, I would say if you got your Clover hat and your Jonathan hat, you know, I would always err on the side of, you know, just keep it clean.
right.
So does the board have any concern with this moving forward? If so, someone needs to attend.
Well,
If not,
I will
then-
be attending just because I'm a homeowner in the area, but does Jonathan need a formal presence at this meeting?
Nope, it's just on the radar. That's all I'm wondering.
Yeah, so
So-
they, so the city knows that it's part of Jonathan because Liz Hanson reached out to Carrie and I in the same email and said, you know, give these people the ARC guidelines or whatever, so, yeah, so they know it's,
See, some of this information, I know it's short notice, but would probably be beneficial to put in the board packet.
We just got it yesterday
So-
or the
yeah, it
Monday.
just came up, so,
Came in the mail too, so, I mean, they came in the mail and then we reached out to Liz, so. Just heard back from her.
So then, once you have all your information, are you gonna put it in writing to us and then send it to the full board so we can be aware, or what's the
Well,
plan?
To our committee for approval. Is that what you're talking, approval of
The
the,
status of this development that's going on in our association. I think that the board should be abreast of what's going on.
Sure,
Whether it
I
be,
have-
whether it be conversation
this
with
is-
the lawyer, whether it be conversation with the developer.
yep,
Otherwise, it feels like kind of getting blindsided a little bit, that we're left out.
So, wait a minute though, does Jonathan get this letter? You've received this letter in the mail?
mm-hmm.
Okay.
At the Karen House, you're saying?
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know why you would get the letter, but.
because
we're
it's
an
part of
interested party.
Jonathan.
Part of Jonathan, I suppose.
So,
I
so
mean, it just
there's,
doesn't seem like that's the case for all things. It seems like,
well, I think we got one when Clover Run went up, I remember that, and
Overrun and the new development, I can't think of what it's called right now, the Brook.
I mean, Stefan's Jonathan too, and he doesn't get a letter.
They,
for
they do
this.
it based
Also,
on the
they-
radius to the parcels that
Yeah.
are impacted.
so they do it to the close by neighbors, and then they send it to Jonathan so that Jonathan can ask these people for their ARC
Mhm.
stuff.
You get it, Judy? Well, Judy's right next to the Karen House.
No, the,
No, next to
the,
the,
next to the building site, so you and I got it because it's in our
Yeah.
backyard, right? So then they also send it to the Karen House so that the Karen House knows to reach out and say, you're part of Jonathan, we have architectural guidelines, you know, so that's why the Karen House gets it.
So Chaska already knew that Jonathan was on the title.
Well, that I don't know, I just got a letter from.
See, that's why I just
I
like.
think we,
like,
okay.
Stefan, my point in all this is I don't know how that the board should be getting this until we can all meet in person and discuss, but that's just my opinion.
So I believe that we own a parcel, or we're listed as a parcel within a certain radius of the impacted parcels. That's why we receive notification, not because we own property at the Karen House. That's my assumption.
You're correct, because yes,
Not that
there
they did the
is-
research that were in the
yes,
Jonathan
yes, I
title.
understand now, because there is Jonathan property that's like little outlots and stuff like that.
There's
Yeah.
state statute that based on the radius, certain distance from those impacted
Now I
parcels,
understand.
if you're a landowner, you get a notice.
Okay, so we're gonna have management send out the info to the board, right? the status of this. Is that right?
I think in,
It could go in next month. I mean, if there's nothing that we need to take action on, it could go into next month's packet.
Yes.
But if there's conversation that's
You'll
going on
need
between,
to- Well, you'll need to approve the
Application.
the ARC application.
but the only reason the board was even made aware of this is because we got this letter, and Judith is on the Cloverfield board, so she was privy to a lot of these efforts as they go on. But when you get this letter, you're gonna come to the board at the next regular scheduled board meeting to ask us for our direction, correct?
I mean, it was in the packet.
Yeah, exactly, but I'm saying like, I thought someone was suggesting that this gets sent out right away, after it gets,
no, all I'm saying is that if there's additional information that we've shared verbally, that we've now discovered is time sent, it was just recently sent, since this has been sent out.
well, it was sent the
At some point-
21st, it wasn't that recent.
At some point, the information needs to be compiled, and the board needs to be made aware and abreast of what's going on with the situation. A disconnect in language, only having one or two people aware of what's going on is not acceptable. There needs to be formal communication to the board, because as a board, we take action. So that's
So
the only
isn't-
point I'm trying to make.
But isn't that what that is by her putting it in the packet? I guess I'm wondering.
This is the
what-
only information I've gotten.
Until yesterday at 4
Till
o'clock.
yesterday
you said,
when
right?
Liz emailed me and said that you, John's gonna reach out to you for approval of the building and the colors and all that. That's all
Yep.
I've gotten.
Completely understand.
Yep.
So all I'm suggesting is that perhaps that information can be compiled as it unfolds, and maybe the outcome of whatever happens with this, that information be put in writing in the next board packet. I mean, that just seems like standard operating procedure, right? Especially if it's, and that's why I was trying to bring to the floor of the board, is there anything that impacts us that someone needs to go to this meeting? If that's the case, we're on notice right now, that one of us will need to go. But if it's not, then, otherwise, we won't know until you update us next month.
Okay.
It's a long way to get there.
Yep.
I think we're there.
Yep, I think so too. All right. National Night Out?
Okay, back to this, sorry. So National Night Out is coming up, and I know last year we ran into a few issues with, it's always been one reimbursement per neighborhood. And some neighborhoods are quite large, like neighborhood 8 was the issue last year. We had 3 people that wanted to throw a party, and it was kind of 3 sections of neighborhood 8. So we didn't really know how to distribute that. Should we give each person? Do we want to stick with one per neighborhood? If so, is it first come, first served? Do we split the reimbursement? And then there's neighborhoods like neighborhood 11, that's very large. So it'd almost be impossible for one person to host a party for that whole neighborhood because it'd just be too many people. Autumn Woods is another example. Clover is another example. So I just didn't know how we wanted to divide that out. And it's never really been a problem since I've been here. Usually around 10 to 15 people are hosting parties. It was just last year that was brought up with a particular neighborhood that there was more than one host. So I didn't know how you guys want to proceed with that.
So as a champion of the National Night Out for many years and seeing how it's grown over time, I would suggest that we allow one reimbursement for each 50 or 75 homes. That would allow larger neighborhoods to have more than one. But at the same time, we'll, still limit the amount that we reimburse somewhat. We have a budget to maintain. And I'd also suggest that anyone who is delinquent not be eligible for reimbursement, and that could all be vetted during the application process if it's accepted on a first-come, first-served basis. That way they would know.
And I have a suggestion that why don't we have one big national night out, Jonathan National Night Out, and have it up at the barn or else at the pavilion?
Well, that was brought up too because we ended up canceling the 4th of July. We have all the hot dogs and the buns. We put everything in the freezer. We took some back to Cooper's. We have all the water, all the chips. Do we want to host something on National Night Out at the Karen House? Or somebody suggested donating the food to the National Night host, but it was also brought up, do we really want to give out food? Because that can be
Let's stick to this and we can come back to that
Okay.
thought.
So I don't know what the right number is as far as a cutoff,
Yeah.
because somebody will be disenfranchised at some point.
Right.
So whatever you think would be best, do you have a suggestion for a number?
I had put on page, what day, sorry,
42.
42, kind of suggested what I would think that per neighborhood, the bigger neighborhoods that should get maybe 1 or 2 or more. That was my suggestion.
So so when someone questions, why do I only get 1 in my neighborhood, but 7 gets 2? What's the methodology that was used?
The number of homes.
What's the cutoff?
I guess I didn't pick an actual number, I just went by size of the neighborhood,
So by density or by physical size?
by physical size.
Because I can think of in certain areas where we have a lot of density.
Well, it's like townhomes, like they don't
Mhm.
have, I mean, I guess some of them could probably grill out or have big events, but it seems to me like National Night Out is more like block related. You know, not really an apartment building or condo or townhome.
Well, what's the one apartment that every year they,
Windstone and Lake Grace both do.
yeah. So,
They host a big, like, parking lot party, and, but they're townhomes and apartments, so I don't know.
so where would they fall in here?
What
What neighborhood?
I have them separate because they're not really in a neighborhood. They're the only 2 that have ever done it in the past.
Is this really an issue, like financially? I mean, we talking about $1,000 here, or what are we talking about?
Yeah,
'Cause I just worry that we would over-police this
Yep,
for
I agree.
really not much money.
Do they have to show receipts?
Yes.
Yes. When we did.
I've always
ours, we had
checked,
20.
obviously, like, make sure they're not delinquent. They have to show receipts, and it has to be, you know, for certain items. It really hasn't been a problem until last year. There was just 3 in the one neighborhood, but
I think it's great to,
I do
I mean,
too.
it's a community building thing, and I'd say the more national night outs, the better. But obviously, you have to, you know, cut it off at some point, but.
Last year was the most. We spent $2,200 in reimbursements.
So how about this, if there's a budget for $3,000, if you've got fire truck and stuff for $700, why don't you just put on there that the event total is capped at $2,300,
First come, first served.
and if it exceeds that, your reimbursement will be made on a pro rata basis. That way everybody gets a fair share.
Yeah.
Like
No, I
every
think
neighborhood should get at least 1,
Sure.
right? And
Yep.
then, you know, for people that come in and additionally, use your judgment on
Sure,
making
okay.
sure that everyone's getting an opportunity.
Thanks for bringing that to the board, because,
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you could have easily just shut it down and said no without asking us, and I appreciate that you bring it to us. That's nice.
And then we have the fire trucks booked. Do you, Stefan and Steve, I know the last 2 years you guys have rode along, and
Yeah, I'd be up for it.
What night? What
unless
is
anyone
the
else
date?
wants to
It's
do
the
it.
first
Tuesday of August.
August
It
7th.
is. First Tuesday.
And one other suggestion I have is last year you guys bought a bunch of candy to hand out. We have a lot of 4th of July goodie bags we could hand out to the kids. So we could save the bags till next year, but there's candy in them, and I don't know if that candy.
Yeah.
No.
No, better to get rid of it.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
So I can put you 2 gentlemen down? Steve,
Are you up for it?
Stefan?
I'll give you one of my kids to take with if you want.
I'm in.
Or
He's
somebody else?
excited and he
got
wants to do it.
grandkids,
I just know.
So are we keeping the budget at 3,000? Because I want it for the minutes.
If I find out the siren doesn't work on that truck, then no.
You're out.
I think we are keeping it, the budget as is. Okay. Anything else in the management report?
I don't believe so. That should do it.
So going back to a topic we had on the table to discuss was our vacant director's seat.
Oh, yes.
So I think I have 3 of these over here. If I turn around and don't look, if you guys want to pass them down or?
So just for clarification, B is Mary, and L is? Yes, Chase.
Because I don't want him to know.
Thanks for suggesting the secret ballot.
Get around the other way.
It's pandemonium.
We have 3 votes to 3. I do have a director that has passed along a vote via proxy. I'm not sure if the board will accept that, being it's not a secret ballot.
Yeah, I mean, we've always done that in the past.
Or I'm the tiebreaker.
Right.
I didn't vote.
Well, you just outed yourself now from secret ballot.
Exactly. We had a director put his vote in, what should I do?
Can they do that? I mean, is that
Yeah,
legal?
they can do that. We've had that in the past when we voted for vacant seats.
Okay, then
So
we,
I
And
think
that's
there's
a
a
secret ballot.
statute that says the board can take action by written correspondence as long as every director has had the opportunity to vote. Now, that's just, that's common law, right?
well, we
This
should,
could be applicable, this or could not be.
then we should accept it.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. As long as everyone's had an opportunity to vote, right?
Well, he was asked to vote.
Because there's a precedent for that. There were times when we were filling vacant board seats during times when people were out of town, in the wintertime, like January, February, or whatever, and
Yeah,
they emailed in their ballot.
that's fine, we should
That's
accept
true.
it.
All right. If that's the case, we voted in by secret ballot, semi, and the board has successfully nominated Mr. Chase Lundstrom to the Jonathan Board of Directors. So what we need to do is we need to put a formal motion on the table to appoint Mr. Chase Lundstrom to the Jonathan Association Board of Directors.
And the term that he's filling is until when?
I believe it's until the next annual meeting.
So I'll make a motion to accept the board nomination and appoint Chase to fulfill the vacant director seat until such time that it has expired.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion, any second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, well, welcome, Mr.
We should
Chase
clap.
Lundstrom. You are welcome to join our open meeting at this time. Or feel free to just continue to watch, but ultimately, you are free to be included. So, come on up.
Come up here and join us.
How awkward is that?
If you wanna, it doesn't have, oh yeah, it does have patients.
He was planning on leaving, but,
Yep.
No, we can't.
You can sit right next to me here.
So Steve wants to know if you'll take his place on the fire truck.
Absolutely. No, I won't. I cheat. I'm in.
All right, so now we actually turn everything over to you. And you just jump right, no, I'm just kidding with you. We do have, moving on to some old business. I don't see anything other than, so on the trail system maps, I've had some casual conversations with Mr. Nate Bostrom on it, but, we haven't really set anything up in terms of a plan. It is something that is owed, so we'll continue to look at it under old business and go from there. Finance meeting, I think what we should try to do is set up a finance meeting. People should look at their calendars now. They're on the finance committee to try to get a time and place scheduled. We've been talking about this for several months, and I think we should do our best to set something up.
2/3 of the board is on the finance committee.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I'm not.
Okay, all right, it's too tough then to do it right now.
honestly, I think that just a date needs to be picked, and those who can attend, and those who can't will participate at the board meeting. Who is?
Steve.
You, are you?
Steve is.
Steve is?
What?
You're the chairperson for the finance
The
committee?
finance committee.
I am?
As the treasurer, you are.
Okay.
As a treasurer. So maybe you could pick a date and time or two and send it out and see who can attend the most.
Okay.
I'd really love to get that debt cleared.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
I said I'd really love to get that debt cleared, the bad debt. I said I'd really like to get that bad debt cleared.
Ah, I understand.
Apple Award nominees. Do we have any nominees yet?
Nope.
Okay.
We have some
typic-
time, but
Yeah, we
just for people to
typically,
keep thinking.
did we give out an Apple Award last year?
Me?
Judy?
Yeah, we did. That's right, I gave it to you. I took your hand and took a picture. We were in the newsletter together.
Duh.
I wanted to check in on that because I think we do it every year as far as I know.
Yeah, but I have a suggestion. I mean, I don't think we should give an Apple Award just to be given it. I think they should deserve it and earn it. And if we don't have anybody, then we don't give it. That's right.
I agree.
Okay. Well, be on the lookout for nominees. You know, the Apple Award, Chase, just so you know, is given out to a Jonathan resident who's exemplified, strong leadership, volunteerism, really gone above and beyond the course of action for a Jonathan resident.
What is the nomination process?
I believe the board nominates.
Yep. Board nominates me, and then I'll supply a list, I think in January, February, and then you guys can vote on it.
Is it limited on the number of nominees? No. Oh.
So can I give a clarification to that? So in the past, it's been a list of nominees for the apple and for the seedling. We've done that at the later part of the year, so they can be presented at the annual meeting at the following. So if we do it in February, like you were saying, we wouldn't have time to provide them an invite. So it typically takes around budget time is when we need to finalize that.
September, October.
Right. Historically, those who have done the National Light Out led that. They've received seedling awards. People who've volunteered for the first, second time.
I think let's try to move on. Let's talk about the Idle House. But what I will ask the board is, it seems like we do talk about this every meeting. Let's talk about, what's happened in the last 30 days. Judith, if you want to just go through kind of a brief outline and summary of what you've seen, what you've heard,
Great.
and then
So-
try to go from there.
Yeah, so the day, if you remember correctly, the day of the last meeting, I just found out that even if we were able to obtain a historic designation on the National Register, that we still do not qualify to apply for state grants to rehab, because we're not a 501c3, we're a 501c4. And so that was, with that information coming in, sort of surprising me at the last minute. We still had Liz here to answer questions, but originally the plan was to partner with the city they are able to apply for a grant to have the property inspection done. That usually costs $10,000. The city, because they are a city, is able to apply for that grant. And they're willing to do that, but they would want Jonathan to pay for the consultant who does, who applies for the grant. And there is a very specific protocol, the way that this is done. And the grants are handed out on a quarterly basis. So I did send an email and copied everybody on it today asking Liz, what's the general, what is her guess as to what the consultant would cost? And I haven't heard back from her on that. So I don't know if you're prepared to vote. Originally, I was going to ask everyone tonight to consider moving forward and voting to have the city apply for the grant on our behalf to have the property inspection done. Because even though it is a starting point, regardless of, anything else, and it would cost us nothing more than the consultant fee. Once we have the property inspection done by a specific person that the state of Minnesota allows, I think there are probably 6 or 7 people in the state that do these consultant property inspections. Once that's done and we have that, then we have an idea of what it will cost to rehab the Idle House. And it doesn't bind us to moving forward. It just gives us an idea of, in order to meet the state's historical requirements, it would cost X number of dollars. At that point, we could take that information, that property inspection, and go to like one of 6 architectural firms that the state has, there's given their stamp of approval to do rehab of National Register historic properties. And so basically, you just take your property inspection, you give it to a firm like McDonald and Mack, who's worked on other houses in Chaska, and then they give you a bid. And my thought is that it is really the only thing that we, in this vote that I'm calling for tonight, the only thing that we are liable for would be the consultant fee. Because the grant would be given to the city of Chaska for the property inspection to be done. And we would come out of it at the other end with some idea of what it would cost. Now, we still don't know what the end game is. We don't know, you know, if we want to fix it up to rent it out. We don't know if we want to fix it up to use as an amenity, you know, similar to like a party room in a condo building for residents to use. But I do think that since we own the property and it's been sitting vacant for 13 years and it has a negative impact on our ability to get property insurance, that it would be smart for the board to take the next step to try to figure out what.
Do you have any idea what the consulting fee might be?
You know, I have never, like, it's whatever a grant writer usually charges. I mean, so I'm kind of waiting to hear back from,
I have no idea.
I'm waiting to hear back from Liz on that, and I maybe threw her a loop by asking her so late in the game.
Do you know, Stefan?
I don't, but I'm sure it's a couple $1,000s. And the thing you need to keep in mind too is that this is a competitive grant that we would be applying for.
Right.
It's not a guarantee grant.
Yes.
So you kind of need to weigh the fact of, do I pay a couple thousand, pay a grant writer and get 10,000, or I just pay the 10,000? Because you have risk either way. I mean, so. And was there any statistics about how many applications in previous rounds for the competitive?
You know, I didn't ask that question, so that would be a good question to ask. The gentleman that I spoke with seemed to think that because they award them quarterly, that I was under the impression that if you applied and didn't get it that particular quarter, that they'd hold your application and perhaps you'd be chosen the next quarter. But I could clarify that too.
Yeah,
So.
and I'm sure you could reapply.
And you could probably use, you know, what your consultant has created to reapply a second time.
So you just pay consultant fee once?
I think so. I mean, that's my impression, you know. So this is all new, you know, I mean, this is not my area of expertise. I could show you how to run a heart defibrillator and do CPR. That was my, you know, I worked for the Red Cross. That was, so this is new for me. And, you know, that's so kind of sharing with you what and I did forward on all of those documents that the state sent to me. And I know, you know, I don't expect you guys, I mean, if you're having trouble sleeping and you want to read something boring, certainly you can read those documents, but I just want you to kind of understand the process a little bit.
So I can speak to the grant process a little bit. I actually administer a couple grants for the state that are legislatively named. So not competitive, but I understand the process. So with the competitive grant, there's typically they'll put out like an RFP, a request for proposals, and then you'll have a scoring criteria. So you can look at the scoring criteria and evaluate whether your project will meet or how it may stack up based on the transparency of the scoring. And then typically when the state approves you for a grant, you have to complete the work within a specified period of time. And they'll also want monitoring, and they'll be involved in the process to make sure that their money actually achieves what they need to.
Yeah,
And there's
so-
typically a match requirement. I don't know if it's just a straight grant, or you may have to do like a 1-to-1 match. The state will pay for $1 if you pay for $1.
So this would not be for construction, so it would be just to have the property inspection done, and it would cover the whole thing.
So it's not a match, there's no match requirement.
Nope.
Just a straight grant.
Exactly.
So I'm
Yep.
assuming probably pretty
And,
competitive.
you know, but kind of the caveat is you can't just have anyone do it. They give you a list, and that was in that stuff that I emailed to everyone. They give you a list, and then this gentleman that I spoke with said, here, you know, this guy is really good. He almost always gets chosen or whatever. So, I mean, you know, there are probably only like maybe 15 people in the state that are allowed to do these property evaluations. So it's a pretty tight, you know, it's a tight process. But you know, so my question to you tonight is, do you want to vote to move forward and ask the city to apply for that grant and then be willing to pay the consultant fee, or do you want to wait till you have more information, like what the consultant would cost, or, I mean, and that is even something, if I find out tomorrow, I could send out and you could do a vote, an email vote, but just keeping in mind that for an email vote to pass, it has to be unanimous. So, or we could wait till the next meeting. I mean, this house has sat there for 13 years, so if it's one more meeting before we apply for the grant, it's not gonna kill anybody, so.
Judith, I have a couple questions. So, once you get the grant, let's say we got the grant,
Yep.
what are we doing with that grant?
So then we go to one of the specific people that are, that the state
Qualified.
allows to do this property inspection. And it takes, a fair amount of time, because they're looking at inside and outside, they're looking at the, that domination form for the local, so, and then what they do is they come up with, basically, for lack of a better term, scope of work.
Okay.
For everything that needs to be done, tuck pointing, new roof.
So, does the grant cover that?
The grant covers nothing but the property inspection. It
Okay,
only covers the property inspection.
Okay.
So the kind of, frustrating news that I heard right before the last meeting was, I thought that we would be able to apply for construction grants for this renovation. And we can't, because
Right.
we're a 501c3,
I understand.
and the city can't on our behalf because they're not the owner. So I want to talk to Helmuth and say, can we, can they take it by eminent domain long enough for them to be able to get construction grants, and then somehow, I don't know, there's so many
I think we
legalities
should,
here.
I think we should just come back to this whole
Yeah.
discussion. The thing that we're gonna need to know is how much the inspection is
Yeah.
gonna cost before we make any decisions or determinations.
The consultant fee?
Yeah,
Yeah.
And what the statistics are from previous grant
sure,
rounds.
yeah, because it might be worth just, if the statistics are not in our favor, then we'll just go and hire the inspector directly, potentially.
Okay.
Because we can do that?
Yeah,
Sure. And we can fix it ourselves?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's in our
Okay,
reserve
that
study.
was my question.
Yeah, it's in our reserve study. I
Okay,
mean, we
that's
have
what I
like
thought.
$150,000 in there
I saw
this
that.
year, I believe, to be,
2018.
yeah, so.
So we're gonna table it.
The board needs to consider what is the end game?
Right.
What are we gonna do with this property when we renovate it? Because when it comes time to vote for it, paying for renovations, I just can't, if I don't know where we're going or what we're gonna use it for,
Right.
I can't spend the money on it, so.
No.
Yeah, so,
I
and
agree.
the perspective that I have is that we own it and we're responsible for it, so I think we have to fix it up and then decide if it's gonna be, if we're gonna try to recoup some of our expenditure by renting it
Yeah, I
out,
mean, if
or
you
if
want-
we're gonna use it as a neighborhood amenity.
If
Or
you're
we
looking for
sell
a
it.
return on the investment for the association, I think renting it out is probably gonna be the most beneficial, or providing the highest rate of return.
Uh-huh,
But with that said, you could probably put a range to it for what the monthly rent could be, but not knowing what the property would end up looking like post renovation,
right.
features, there's a lot of different variables that can come into play, but Stefan, you're exactly right. That would have to be something that we do look at, but again, I think this topic, it's good that we keep touching base on it every month, but let's come back to it.
So you're not wanting to vote tonight until we have a better understanding of what the consultant fee would be that we'd have to pay for the, is that what I'm hearing?
I would suggest that.
Okay. So we'll wait till we hear from Liz and see if we get a ballpark and then revisit it next month.
I'm only one person though.
Can I put something out there? So if it's under 2,500, is this something that the board would wanna move forward with?
Well,
If
if
that's
it's
the case,
professional services,
It doesn't need,
as,
well, because being under contract, it's over $1,000.
yeah.
That's the policy, okay. So the way it's gonna come back to the board then.
Mm-hmm, okay,
It's something we can move quickly on. The executive committee could also look at it too.
sure.
So. All right. Pavilion stairs, anything updated on there, or,
For bids to come in, but
okay?
he's really busy.
Oak Valley Mail Station.
Should we back up a second? So there was some other questions came out of this, right? There was questions about doing a path down. What was the response as far as ADA accessibility? There was a
Oh,
question
yeah,
like
I
that
talked to the
whenever
city
raised.
about that, and they said that we would not need a permit for that. It was up to them, or up to us, or up to whoever is gonna do the paving to approve it to the ADA. But he said the city has paths out there that are not up to ADA code. So it's not something that necessarily has to be up to ADA code. But being it's on our property, it's up to us to make sure, to decide if we wanna make it up to code or not, whether we have to have a handrail or not. Said it's kind of up to the association.
So if it was that, it seems like it would be pretty steep, like we'd have to,
Right.
like we'd wanna do a handrail.
Absolutely.
I prefer the steps idea, but I'm just one person on the board,
Right.
so I don't know.
So we had one company come out, I think yesterday or Friday, I don't remember which day it was, and to look at it for a railing bid. I mean, I have no idea what a railing's gonna cost. It could be 5,000, it could be 20. So we're just kind of waiting for some bids to come in to see where we're gonna start at even. So hopefully by next month, we'll be able to have some type of dollars in.
I think a railing is really important. Is there
I do
one
too.
there right now?
There's not a railing there now.
No, but
But even if we keep the stairs, I think it would be a good idea to put a railing,
Right, I do too.
so.
Speaking as a person who has bad knees that go out on them all the time, and I'm always,
Mhm.
holding tight to the railing.
Yep.
Should put it in the middle. Put the railing in the middle,
So,
so you can use both going up and going down, right?
there you go.
Not a bad idea.
No, that's a good idea.
So,
No, that's true. Could
this
get the golf
ADA
cart.
thing, like, okay, if we're going the stairs, I don't think it's gonna be an issue, but if we're going the pathway, like, I don't quite get understand the response. The city says, oh, it's your responsibility to deal with the ADA, so what is the standard that it needs to be within? What slope, max slope?
That I don't know. I think that would be up to the vendor.
Well, we're the property owners, I mean, we need to do our own due diligence.
it's,
Do you like,
there is special specifications that you need to abide by. I believe it's around, don't quote me on this, but it usually has like a 2-foot slope in, 15 feet, something to that effect.
so it seems like that would be way steeper than that.
I would have a hard time seeing someone put a ramp in down to the pavilion area that met ADA standards.
Yeah.
I would have a hard time believing that unless a lot of fill was brought in and it was a very gradual decline.
Yeah. So why aren't we voting on the stairs?
We don't have it in our packet this month.
We don't have any numbers or anything.
Well, I thought last month we did have some bids on stairs.
There was bids for the trail, and then there was bids for the stairs, and they wanted more information from the city and a handrail bid.
Okay, so,
And we had 2 bids, correct? And
yeah,
Yeah.
you guys threw one out?
Yeah, because it was, just didn't seem like it was.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll have to put those bids in next month then and vote on them, because we don't have them. I don't remember what they were.
yeah.
Is it possible that you can remove the stairs and just let the forest take over? Because there is a path that goes down to Lake Grace. Is that a possibility too?
Anything's possible.
You're
I'm
saying
just
there's an
wondering if we
existing path,
have to.
There is an existing path. I think it's either or, and it's up to the board to make that decision. Do they want to keep the stairs? Do they not want to keep the stairs? Do they want to keep the path? Or do they want to keep both?
I want to keep the stairs, but I want them to be safer and look nicer.
One thing to keep in mind, it's our Jonathan Association's responsibility to maintain common elements, and that's a common element of the association. So we've had these discussions before where we have trails and we've said, well, no one uses them anymore, the forest is taking over them. And we've done a lot of research and done a lot of background documentation when we have made a determination to let a trail go back to nature. Because again, we are expected under our declaration and bylaws to make sure that we are maintaining common elements.
And we do have, it's Superior last month,
Yeah.
Was it like
27,000.
22,000 or something like that?
27,776 from Superior.
And that's without a handrail?
Correct.
And was this part of the reserve study? Did we determine that? I think that was the question.
It was brought up last year during the 50th, because some people said that the stairs were kind of unsafe, and so
It
it was
doesn't
just.
have its own line item.
Right.
It does not have
No,
its
it
own
does not.
line
I
item. It's
contacted
part
the
of,
reserve study
it's
and
part of the
theirs.
trails.
Correct.
So what do we need to move, what do we need to do in the next month to move this forward to a vote?
Just have a railing bid probably.
Yep.
Just one, or is there multiple bids, or?
I would suggest 2
We're
to
getting
3
multiple.
bids.
And then we've already
like
got,
one more for the stairs, because we've got Superior. Is there anybody else willing to bid on that?
Yeah, outdoor images,
All I have is,
I think. So 2 stairs.
so we should be ready next month then?
Yep.
If the contractors can get their stuff to us, yes.
Right,
We got to the 14th next month, so maybe we can get our financials out on like the 2nd.
Don't push it off.
All right. Oak Valley Mail Station. That was a table item under old business. Is that something we want to have a discussion on tonight?
The sign?
The Oak Valley Mail Station.
Well, I think that was not in our reserve study, and it came back more expensive than we were thinking, and we were never planning on doing it this year anyway.
Okay.
You know, when we asked for the bid, we just wanted to know, like, ballpark of what it would cost, and then maybe put it in for,
Next year's budget.
right,
Or the next reserve study we do.
yeah. But as long as we're talking about Oak Valley,
Well, that's,
So, we talked about them last month, right? Didn't we approve a mailbox? Has that been completed?
that was, no, that's what we were talking about, the mailbox. It was more money than expected, so.
wait a minute.
But it was
No, that's
approved
Juliet
last
Park.
month.
You're
No,
thinking
it
of
wasn't
Juliet Park.
yeah, you're thinking of Juliet Park. We're talking.
So, we didn't add anything on the Oak Valley sign this evening after open forum.
Yeah,
So, just as a point of order, I think being it wasn't added to the agenda, I would
Okay.
suggest that we do not discuss that this evening.
okay.
So, is there anything else, the neighborhood 10 trees, tree policy next month?
Yep, Judith
Okay.
and I are meeting next week.
All right, let's go on to new business if that's okay.
Mhm.
Communication report, page 66.
Talk about it, or do you want me to? Clint wrote it, but it's up to you.
Well, we met at the Karen House Communications Committee. It was Clint, Carrie, and myself. Judy wasn't able to attend. And you can kind of see the report. Clint put this together. We talked about calendar of events, the newsletter, the signs throughout Jonathan, and the branding of that, and letterhead, and then website updates. So I don't know if anyone has any questions after reading through the report.
I had a question about the letterhead and the envelopes and such. We've talked in previous years about our annual mailing actually looking like it came from the Jonathan Association and not a third party, our management company. So is that part of this plan, to get custom envelopes and custom letterhead made, and that way any communication from the Jonathan would be clear and consistent to the homeowners, or?
Yes, that is part of the plan. So I think Carrie was going to check with Gaston to see if that was possible. And then we wanted a side-by-side comparison to make sure there wasn't any increase in price from moving from the Gaston letterhead to the Jonathan letterhead. And we asked for an annual, all of the annual mailings that go out, so we can see in 1 year how much is the price difference between Gaston and Jonathan. Because I think a lot of people may not pay their dues because they get a letter from Gaston not knowing what it is, and they may throw it in the trash. So I think it might be helpful to have this Jonathan branded letterhead, the envelope that comes from the Jonathan Association, that people might actually be opening the letter to see what's in there. And that would be all communications that went out. Any of the ARC violations, any welcome letters, any and all communications would be the new branded, the Jonathan logo that's on the silo.
Right.
I think it's an excellent idea.
I think it's a good idea.
So is the discussion back at the mothership that you're going to order those for us and that'll be a pass-through cost, or you haven't
Yeah,
got
I'm
that
gonna
far
talk to
yet?
Kirk about it. We met last week, and then it was the 4th, and I was on vacation, but we're gonna talk about that. And do you guys want me to present it, or do we just wanna move forward with it?
Present it.
Present it for sure.
Okay.
We want to see the cost
Sure.
difference, yeah.
Okay?
And I'm assuming you'd want that with the new brand?
Yeah. That's what she was saying.
Yeah, Clint had a whole sheet of examples in different colors. He did a great job of the contrasting colors, and like the silo has the year on it, which is very legible and like the large silo, but once you get it on letterhead, it's harder to read some of those details, so we took some of that off and stuck with the Chaska diamond.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? I think we're gonna meet again to discuss the newsletter. There's a newsletter coming out in September.
I like the idea of a photography contest,
Mhm.
and, you know, seeing if the neighbors have anything that they want to submit. I think that's another way of community building, getting people involved and feeling like they have a contribution to the association, so I like that idea a lot.
Yeah, we did the silo competition, so someone in the community designed that, so it's nice to have that. Rather than using stock photos, it'll be nice to have some personal photos from neighborhoods and personal touches like that.
Okay. We have an ARC application that was deferred to the board on page 68.
Yeah, so, the art committee had met back in June, and based on our discussions, we declined to provide a decision on this matter and instead deferred to the board. In a nutshell, there's a driveway extension that was applied for, but when we looked at the site plan as a whole, we felt that it did not have enough of the elements that needed to be there as far as screening and such. So in the written correspondence that I provided on 68 on behalf of the committee, there's 2 issues given. There's some consideration, and then there's also a recommendation. Do you want me to go through those individually, or?
I don't think you need to necessarily.
So has the board had time to consider the matter as far as the application? I think Carrie, you had sent the rest of the application materials out electronically,
Yep.
and just the memo made it into the packet.
So one question I had, is this something we can vote on in an open board meeting? Because it is a legal concern with the board.
That's a good question. So, if the board considers it to be a risk as far as litigation, and it's a strategy situation, the board can close the meeting. So, it really is up to the board. I mean, if we're just discussing it in general, either yay or nay, but when you start getting into some of the more details that have been provided in writing, it might be you may want to consider closing it and having the discussion to protect the association members at large.
Yeah, and it does fall under, you know, the criteria for a closed session, so we could do it after.
Okay. So we want to table, well, not table it, but defer any action to get to close the meeting to discuss, I guess.
Okay.
4th of July. Steph?
Oh, I added that. I was just hoping that that whoever was involved in the 4th of July and the decisions that took place on the 4th could kind of talk about, a little bit about the methodology that took place, but to making the decision. And then I also, I saw that Vern was on the 5 o'clock news, and I wasn't sure if Gasson knew he was on the news or not.
Nobody did.
Okay.
Marsh Hallberg set that up, I guess, but we didn't know anything about it.
Okay, because typically, I mean, you have your own policy, whether that's within your policy or not within your policy, but typically it's been, you know, media has been sent through the communications team or through the board president
Yeah.
before showing up on the 5 o'clock news, so you kind of want to walk through a little bit about what took place that day?
Okay, well, I was the only one there. I think Judy and Justin showed up like around Kitty Parade time. So we were all down at the pavilion. Marsh and Kelly were running the Kitty Parade. And obviously 5 or 10 minutes before it started, it was lightning, thundering, pouring rain, everything was blowing everywhere. And so just between Marsh and Kelly and myself, they called and said, you know, we can't start this. Fire station wasn't able to come, and as far as I know, and the police contacted me and said, we have too many calls, we can't help with the Kitty Parade, I suggest you cancel. We're like, we are already. And Marsh had said that some of the families still wanted to proceed, even though it was pouring rain, but most of them were like, we're out of here, we're leaving. So, but being down at the pavilion, the band was set up, there's literally, their equipment all got wet, there was standing water everywhere, all the food was blowing, the tents were blowing. All the vendors said we're out, you know, the jumpy houses obviously couldn't put their stuff up, and the animals, they put all the animals away. And so Marsh and Kelly both called me individually and said, I think we gotta call it. So, and I said, well, there's nobody here. And there was so much standing water that we just decided it was unsafe with, you know, the wetness of the grounds and stuff that,
Especially if there's lightning.
yeah,
I
that
mean,
was right
that's-
during the Kitty Parade. And then we talked about holding off, but all the vendors were already packed up. The band was already putting all their equipment away because it was getting wet. And there
Seems like
was,
a really good common sense decision.
yeah.
I was on a beach in Boston enjoying beautiful weather.
It was terrible timing, and it's too bad that it came right when it did, because we had everything set up. I mean, the maintenance crew was there at 6:30 in the morning. I was there at 7:30. I mean, we put a lot of time and effort into setting it up, and then,
Well, thanks for being there.
yeah.
I just wonder if we should have Plan B or something.
Well, we talked about that. A couple, like Vic Benetti was there helping, and he said, you know, do we have a plan B? I said, what could you possibly do? I don't know.
Well, it was suggested that if you open up the barn and have the kids go in there with their bikes and maybe have some popsicles or something like that, you know, and see if
Sure.
it's gonna clear off. If it doesn't, then they go home, but
Yeah. I mean, I guess, like Marsh said, in 51 years, this has never happened, so.
You know, I think a lot of the times we, as leaders, make a decision, you know, to go a direction that you think you need to go in.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's ultimately a determination that has to be made on the fly.
Yep.
Sometimes I think we can sit here and say, you know what, next time, try to give me a call or give someone on the board a call so we can talk through it, but, you know, I hate to say that. I don't mean that.
Right.
I don't mean to say that in a way that says you did something that I consider wrong. All I'm saying is that perhaps there are other ways to address the situation. But in this case, I don't know that it would have changed the outcome at all.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I was gonna ask you is, I went down to the pavilion, and it was for people that didn't actually get the yay or nay, they got their information on social media, or they got their information by showing up.
Mm-hmm.
And there was nothing that told people that the event was canceled, other than the fact that there was nothing going on. And you just saw people kind of walking around, putting stuff away.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I missed something, but it just seemed like maybe perhaps we should have had someone there kind of coordinating and just messaging with people. And this was more at like 10:30, 11:30 time.
I don't know, we didn't have enough people. I mean, I'll be honest, it was Vern and the 2 guys, me and my daughter. I mean, honestly, that was it. Kelly and Marsh were running the Kitty Parade, that was it.
And
You know,
they
there
bailed.
was food flying everywhere. We just didn't have enough help.
Mm.
So, and it was lightning, pouring rain, I mean, we were soaking wet. So if, next year, I guess I'd suggest more volunteers, because we did not have enough staff at all.
Well, all of our volunteers were scheduled to come a little bit later.
Right.
And that's part of the problem. You know, we had some bodies that were
Mhm.
willing and able, it's just the timing of it just
Right.
didn't really
It
match
just-
up.
Yep, bad timing.
Okay. Any other thoughts on it, on the 4th of July, guys? I mean,
No, I just wanted to kind of talk through it a little bit, see what we could learn from what happened, and, you know, if we obviously identified, or you identified, that we need a contingency plan.
Mhm.
We need to have a plan of action in case we are gonna cancel it.
Yeah.
And then you had mentioned, part of that plan is, you know, we're gonna have volunteers, they need to know this is what you're gonna do in case of Plan B. But, you know, it was really interesting, like, it got really bad, but then it cleared about 10 minutes after 10.
yes, yes.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I witnessed the people meandering around
The problem
pavilion
is
and
with
pass.
the vendors. The vendors were out. I mean, you know, I think they would have waited, but there was so much standing water, like the bouncy houses. I can't even imagine they would have been able to set up. They were stuck. I don't know if anyone's been down there since, but there's divots everywhere. The grass is all ripped up. They got stuck on the trail. I mean, so putting a bouncy house up when there's that much water and kids slipping and sliding, I mean, we just said this is a safety factor. And Marsh was the first one to say it. He just said, I just can't see going on. It's just too much water. So it wasn't that it rained and it was gone 10 minutes later and everything cleared up. It was a mud mess down there. So, and the whole pavilion is wet. You know, the few of us that were there were slipping and
Carrie, I don't think you really have to continue to
Yeah.
justify
Yeah.
your decision. I
Right.
don't. I really don't. I
Just
mean,
saying that we need to know what we, you know, we need to know what the plan is, that one person stands on each entrance and cuts off traffic, or, you know, like, how do we deal with the vendors? They didn't perform their contract.
Right.
So do we
working
ask
with
for
them.
money back? I mean, like, there's a whole bunch of other
Right.
questions that, you know, I mean, I'm sure you're working through now,
Yep.
so. You know, and in our contract with the vendors, like, was this in the contract, whether, if it's rain or
It
shine?
was, it's rain or shine. And some of them are being generous and said that if we do a national night out, they'll come back for it, like the face painters and stuff. Some are, you know, drove 2.5 hours. The ponies drove 2.5 hours, and the petting zoo is almost 2 hours away. So they're like, you know, travel time, we were still there, we still set up. So some are willing to give back a portion.
you know, and if we were to risk, you know, jeopardizing a relationship,
Right.
you know, I mean, we won't be getting them to come back. If we were to
It's
say.
really a risk you take with outdoor events, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Then the communication piece, there
Yeah,
should be a clear
the
message to
biggest
the media.
thing, the biggest thing I think that we should plan for the future is, you know, if we do have a situation where the weather does clear up and it's safe for people to be outside, then I would suggest that we have volunteers and staff that are at least down there an hour after the event was supposed to start, and just making sure that people, when they show up, that they know something's up, something's canceled. A formal message versus showing up with 3 kids and their balloons waiting to play. You know, that's the only thing I thought was a little bit frustrating, in my opinion.
But the hard call was made, and I think, you know, for a safety standpoint, you should be congratulated for that.
I did have someone yell at me and say, well, why aren't you having it tomorrow? And I said, I work tomorrow. I unfortunately don't have the week off. I wish I could. And they're like, well, look at my 2 young kids here. What are they gonna do? And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I did try to sit down there for a little while, but
Right, we had a couple people we talked to, and once we explained it all, they're like, oh, you guys made the right decision, we understand, but they're like, what are you gonna do with all the food? And
Yeah, I had someone say to me, can't we just wait a little while?
So
All right.
so we have the ability to send an e-blast, and we've gathered email addresses. Is that anything that we can do, like?
yeah, we probably should have sent a 4th of July message that when it was canceled, the email blast should have went out.
I don't even know how to do that.
That's a lesson learned for next time too.
Is that something, it's not only you, Stephen, that can do that. Can Clint do that?
I've
Clint
been
can
told
do
not to, so I won't.
Yeah,
So
Clint,
so that would be something Clint would do then? Or,
Yeah, I
okay.
think
We would just have to have it as
A
a
plan.
contingency plan.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that like someone should have done it.
No,
I'm
right,
saying
right.
that we should have had a plan.
Yeah, I'm just kind of brainstorming for future.
Yeah.
Is that a tool we can use?
We have to have it in our back pocket.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I just don't know how many residents have their email.
Well, and hopefully we can keep encouraging people to sign up, you know, because then, you know, maybe that's a thing, if they realize, oh, my neighbor got an email, but I didn't.
Because I think some people were looking online, trying to find out, is it canceled? Is it still on? It's sunny out. I don't know what's going on. So to your point, Justin, it would be nice to know.
Yeah, a lot of people found it on Facebook, I think.
Yeah.
and a lot of people think we are part of the fireworks too, I've
Yeah.
noticed.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
So I have people like emailing me, calling me, like that know me personally that live around here, and are the fireworks still on? I'm like, I don't know, call the city.
So years ago, Jonathan
Yeah.
did do the fireworks,
Yeah.
and then for many years, they made a contribution to the city for the
Mhm.
fireworks, so that's kind of where that comes from.
Let's, all right, good talk on that. I think we have some good ideas for how to move forward.
So will there be a plan put in place for next year, or what's
I
the,
think that's something that the the Fourth of July organizers will have to make sure that they take into account.
So can we make that a board directive so that we can actually follow up and make sure a plan's been put in place?
Is it a board directive for management or the committee?
Committee, organizers, which does include you guys, organizers and
Okay.
staff.
And what is the board directive?
Contingency planning.
To be frank, there should be one for each of our events that we host. I mean, the Coco and Coasting, it's just another one that isn't
Like the year we had no snow.
Yeah.
Almost every year.
that one is probably already written.
We already know what to do.
Bring the games, right?
Yep. All right. We have another item up here on the agenda. Did you get that directive written down?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, good. Certificate of deposit, Carrie had reached out to Steve and I on getting our certificate of deposit, I guess resubmitted, if you will. I took a look at some revised rates as of current. So just so you know, we have about $120,000, give or take, in a certificate of deposit at Security Bank here. And I looked at kind of the 3, 6, and 1 year mark on these rates, and it looks to me like a 3-month certificate of deposit, it's 0.7% APY, 1.1% for 6 month, and 1.59% for 1 year. One thing that I think just wanted to make you guys aware is and you guys might already be aware, but the rate environment we're seeing, especially in the next several months, I think we're definitely going to see an uptick. I would say perhaps it could be between 40 and 50 basis points, so maybe a 0.5%.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would think a shorter term, so typically we've done a 1 year
Right.
certificate of deposit, but I think we ought to do a shorter term.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm looking for is for the board to make a motion to go with a 6-month certificate of deposit, Security National.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
So we have a bunch of money in CDARS, what we call ICS, right? What's the rate on that?
No idea.
So remember there was a previous, a recommendation by previous property manager.
Yep.
One of the concerns is the reason why the board put 120,000 there is to get below the FDIC
Yeah.
limit, to spread our money out. But we have that same protection in this other accounts that we have. But is that rate competitive, or? I'd hate for us to lock it up if we have a liquid account.
How do we do that last year?
Switch, I might even break that down into 4 or 5 different CDs instead of carrying such a high dollar amount on one. That's a thought. I mean, it's a thought. You could change you could do a 6-month, a 9-month, or a 12-month,
I think what he's wondering is our rate better in our ICS, ICS cash fund, or is it better in a certificate of deposit?
I can't answer that for you.
Because we had talked about laddering, and then it was brought forward to us as a suggestion to go into the ICS fund. Some people call it CDARS, S-C-E-D, I think it's C-E-D-R-S, I think it is, abbreviation. But basically what it does is it's, you put your money into one fund, and they put that money into different banks.
Yeah.
And you have protection in each, but you typically earn a higher rate.
I think it makes sense. Yeah.
But it sounds like time's of the essence here, right?
Well,
Because you only have 7 days from the date of maturity.
Well, Amy should be able to tell you the rate,
Mhm.
right? I mean, she's the signer on the account, so.
I'm looking.
Different
at
Amy,
Google.
not the same.
Yeah, someone at Gaston.
No, yeah, I'm sorry, the controller at
Yeah.
Gaston should be able to tell you the rate. So if you could get that information, in the next few days,
And tomorrow morning.
then you could do an executive committee action.
And in the past, they've had specials. Did you include the special, or typically when you go into the bank, I don't know if you noticed that, but when you go into Security Bank, you have to present them the certificate,
Yeah.
and you have to sign it, and then that's what you keep in the safe box. It's old school. Like you actually have to give them the physical certificate. And so you go in there and they have a handwritten sign that says what their special is. That includes a step up, so you can step it up one time during the. Sure.
But either way,
So.
we have no idea what the ICS rate is right now. That bugs me.
Can you Google it?
It's probably somewhere.
I don't know if it's in the treasurer's financials. Do you get statements for the ICS, or only for Klein Bank and for?
I can look.
No, I've got my phone to Google.
No, it should be listed there. Did you get a separate packet?
So perhaps the
I
recommendation,
have a packet here. I'm gonna.
perhaps the recommendation has changed from before, whether we should be keeping our money in these ICS accounts or not, to reduce our risk. I mean, we got 1.2 million.
Can we just task Justin with making the decision after you talk to Amy? Just,
Get the
are
rate.
you okay with that, Justin?
Yeah.
Because it seems like we just need some information from Amy Kleinschmidt on what that is, and if you can even just get on the phone with Amy and.
It's probably very similar.
I'm
I'm
sure,
sorry?
I'm sure.
It's very similar.
Is it?
So yeah, if we can,
So I move that we authorize Justin to, after doing further research and due diligence, to enter into a new CD or to the ICS fund as appropriate.
I second.
motion and second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
I move that we adjourn.
All right, we have a motion on, we have a second?
Second?
Motion and second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.